Welcome again, everybody, to the third edition of Kannaway Champions. You know, we've had Solomon Wilcots, who's been on Sirius Satellite XM NFL channel, very wise contributions about being a professional, working through adversity, growing up in Compton, California. Then we had Christian Okoye, growing up in Nigeria, knowing absolutely nothing about American football, and actually still being a track guy at Azusa Pacific, and then watching Marcus Allen run a reverse 75-yard touchdown to beat the Redskins in the Super Bowl, walking into the office of the head coach at Azusa Pacific and saying, I would like to try football. I would like to be like this guy, Marcus Allen. And I bring up those examples because no matter where you come from, as we saw with Solomon, as we saw with Christian, these people took what was given them, the cards they were dealt. Christian would have been a silver or gold medalist in the Olympics in '84. And yet, despite what could have been a bitter outcome, he turned it into gold, literally a different kind of gold, NFL gold. So now we're with someone who I'd love to share with the different kind of journey that a punter in the National Football League goes through. Because this guy, frankly, when I left the Kansas City Chiefs, he'd been a great holder for me. I had some of my very best years with Bryan Barker as my holder. But I would never have predicted that he would play another 10 years. And I think the lessons from Bryan Barker about what he learned when he was being cut, trying to make it just the way I was trying to make it in the NFL, what he learned, how he learned, and then how he learned to apply that to extend his career, make the Pro Bowl with the Jacksonville Jaguars, play with a bunch of other teams, and really carve out a fantastic 16-year career. 16, right, Bryan?
16, yes, correct.
16 years. I played 18. I would have thought Bryan would have had maybe 12, but that's where the lessons, if we apply them, allow us to apply to new circumstances, new contexts, new unfair things that happen to all of us. So, Bryan Barker, welcome to Kannaway Champions.
Thank you, and pleasure to be here.
You know, I feel a special bond with Bryan, not only because he was a kicker, a punter in this case, but you know, we both went through adversities. We both had difficulty making it, and when you are the holder and the kicker, it's a very intimate situation. You have to trust that other guy. So I'll leave this before we get into our questions. I'll give this paradigm, which is the holder presents the ball to the kicker and sets him up to be successful. A little bit like John the Baptist, maybe, right? Before the guy, he's got to do everything right and set the stage. And in this case, Bryan was a great punter too, but he had tremendous work ethic. So let's start back a little bit when you were growing up in California and your father was a real estate baron, perhaps, and went to Harvard, got his master's. Your mother was a nurse and then raised 7 children. Tell us about what was the Barker culture? Was it about hard work? What was it like to be in that family, Bryan?
It was fantastic. I think that first and foremost, how lucky we were to grow up in an era without social media, electronic devices connecting us to the world. We literally, as kids growing up in Northern California, were outside all day until we couldn't see, or mom called us to dinner. So that was easy for me and my brothers and sisters and all of us to really develop these kind of team-oriented habits. We're playing pickup games outside. We're learning to throw, catch, swing, kick, everything. So we became more of a solid athlete, which obviously helped me become a punter.
What sports did you play in high school?
Everything, whatever the season was, that's the sport I played. I did switch 1 year, my sophomore year. I did not play football because the freshman experience was terrible. So I ran cross country my second year in high school, and then they caught me throwing footballs in the spring and said, "You're playing football next year," and that's the start of it.
So what position did you play?
I was a backup quarterback and a free safety. I punted, never really practiced, but I punted because athletically it demanded that you move and catch a ball that may not be perfect from a high school long snapper and let go of it and kick it while it's moving. And I could do that athletically better than anybody else.
Bryan, describe the difference for people that don't know American football, the difference between a place kicker and a punter. I will say this, the punter has to have great hands. The kicker may not necessarily have great hands. The punter has to catch that ball and find a way to drop it so that it can hit off a different part of his foot so it spirals. Describe the difference between the two.
The easiest way to describe it, and I do this with kids all the time, is you spent your career kicking a ball that was stationary on the ground, whether it was on a tee to start a half, a quarter, a game, whatever, or after a touchdown or a field goal, or it was usually in the hands of a holder holding it steady for you. Whereas a punter, we don't kick the ball off the ground. We actually don't even have the ball until the play starts. Everyone's running at us. We catch it. Hopefully it's catchable. And then we have to take short, quick steps, drop it, like I said earlier, and somehow make contact on a consistent basis to get it to go high and far as the game plan demanded.
Let's go through the numbers too. It's the ball snapped back in about, 0.75 seconds, snapped back about 15 yards. So less than a second for that ball to go 45 feet. You catch it, and then you have, about 1 seconds to catch it, step, and kick it.
One thing I learned early on was to be very quick, and I was one of the quickest punters. So my average handle time from catch to kick was about 1.2 or better, a lot of times in the 1.1 range. We always practiced for fun when we were out in the stadium the day before the game. How quickly can you get it off in an emergency? And I could catch it and kick it in about a half a second. Not hugely effectively, but it wouldn't have been blocked, and that's the goal.
And that's one of the things I think that you learn as a player at any position is part of your training is what would be the hardest situation to be in? How can I train for that? So I'm even ready for that because for the punter, your team is backed up on the 1 inch line. The ball snapped back not 15 yards, but basically 10 yards. Your heel is 1/2 inch or 1 inch inside of the goal line. If you touch it, you're out of bounds. So that's a penalty and a crucial mistake for your team. It could change the game. And then you have to get it off. It's a safety, and which scores 2 points for the other team. Then you have to punt it back to them. So, so there are some interesting things that you have to prepare to do. But you had your challenges, Bryan Barker, to make it in the NFL. What, as you look back now after a 16-year career, what were the challenges? What made you better? So you went from not being good enough to transcending all of that failure to be one of the best in the NFL.
I think first and foremost, I had to believe. I really had to believe that I had the ability to do it. And my position in football, I walked on at Santa Clara because I was bored. I didn't get a scholarship. I wasn't recruited. There were 4 punters there. And I ended up, and I never practiced punting before that. So this is the first time I'm going to be just a punter. And I beat everybody out, and that's how I played 4 years. But what's great about my job as a punter versus most of the other positions is I can literally time every hang time and measure every distance with the same numbers. They don't change. And then I could do that watching an NFL game. So as I closed out my collegiate career, it wasn't that I wasn't good enough. I'd just been a guy at a small school who wasn't on the national spotlight, who didn't have numbers that led the league, but I did believe, and I think that's the answer to your question, the first answer, I truly believed I had the ability to match what I was seeing on TV because I could look at the same clock and the same yardstick that were being used to measure them.
You know, also one of the things I think we all have functional insecurity, you know, that level of sense, I'm not quite good enough, I can get better, and how do I reinforce myself and convince myself I'm good enough, but I'm going to get better. And you were always reflecting that initial insecurity, which I certainly had too. You were always looking at numbers, you know, what are my numbers? Are they good enough? What are my numbers? And it's so hard as a punter because of that unstable place from which you kick the ball to be consistent. Sometimes it doesn't turn over. Sometimes it hooks left. Sometimes it wobbles. Sometimes once in a while, not very often, it might go out of bounds. And but you would use those numbers. I think for a lot of people, our Kannaway brand ambassadors is one audience, measuring your success and giving real numbers to what you're trying to achieve, writing them down, putting them in your wallet, putting them on your mirror in your bathroom, you know, infusing yourself with here's what I want to achieve, here's where I am. Tell us about the role of numbers as you matured into your career.
That's a great question that you have had a huge impact on me. So I'll start there. I don't think that my career would have lasted as long as it did if I wasn't lucky enough to play with you as my first 4 years in the league. And I say that because as the oldest of 7 kids, I didn't have an older sibling to show me how to work hard. I just sort of had to learn it. I didn't get a scholarship to college. I didn't get drafted or invited to any workouts in the NFL. But when I finally did make it and you were there, no off-season program. It was, just kind of do what you got to do to survive and get better. And I learned from you immediately the difference between making the NFL and being a professional in the NFL. We all know there could be 53 men on the roster, but there are only a handful of true professionals on every team. Those are the guys that have long careers, that have successful careers. And then the rest are 2- and 3-year guys to keep the averages down. If they would just tremendous talent, but they weren't truly professional and working at their craft. So the numbers came into play for me early on. That first year, I was a 26-year-old rookie, but I was a rookie, and I was given the designation of making the all-rookie team because there probably were only maybe one other punter that was rookie.
Still sounds good.
I was rookie of the year, and you're only a rookie once, so I get to claim that. But coming into my next year, I didn't want to say, well, look, I was rookie of the year. How can I get better? I had a lot of great numbers, obviously, or I wouldn't have been invited back. But we started to look at the punts individually instead of collectively and realized that my first punt of every game was a Pro Bowl type punt. My second punt in every game tended to be far below standards. And I think what we identified is that I got so amped up for that first punt with all the warm-up kicks, the sweat, everything's ready, the adrenaline, that when I got in there, I'd hit a great punt. And it was almost what I learned personally. It was a relief. Wow.
You let down a little bit.
I just got a great kick. And then I didn't have that same adrenaline for
get ready for the next one. Yeah. Now there's a really important thing. Yeah. Just to jump right in, which is a really important thing. You make it in the NFL. You have a great season. You have a great game. You have a great kick. Boom.
Yeah.
Get ready for the next one. Learn from it. Get ready for the next one, because that hunger is so crucial. The people that take time off. I mean, the worst example and the best at the same time is the guy who's making $10 million. And he makes a great tackle in the first quarter, and he is celebrating all over the field. I just want to say, shut up, go back to the huddle. It's the first quarter. When the team wins, when the clock is struck 0, then you celebrate. Marcus Allen, we talked about Marcus with Christian Okoye last week. Marcus would simply say, I scored a touchdown, take the ball, hand it to the ref, act like you've been there. So that's a self-concept thing as well, right? You go from, oh, great, I did hear, I was nervous, etc. Great outcome, the first punt, and then a little bit of a letdown, as opposed to maintaining that level of intensity and confidence and getting ready for the next one. Adam Vinatieri, one of the great kickers of all time, maybe the best, certainly, a couple of the most famous clutch kicks of all time. If he didn't have the ability to get ready for the next kick, he would not have made those Super Bowl clinching kicks. And that is why I love kickers, because what we have to do is in a matter of just a couple seconds. All the preparation doesn't mean anything if you don't get it when you have to get it done. So I'm unfair to lots of people, right, Lisa? Because I'm like, get it ready right now, because this is your chance to be right. And it's a standard that almost no one has to be held to. But the other side of the coin is for you to help yourself get better. That's the only person to challenge yourself to improve is your competition with yourself. Matthew McConaughey, in his Oscar speech a few years ago, said, I'm competing with me 7 years from now. I want that person to respect the person I've been. So you're always striving to get better, and you're never quite good enough. At the same time, you're still you. And that's a difficult thing, because that's the battle of the ego, which plays the role of comparison, writing down figures, very important, striving for goals, and that sort of spiritual strength to know I'm the best I can be, and I have a peace with that. The pretty difficult thing, Bryan, would you say, to have peace with who I am right now, even as I'm hungry to be much better and to be the best ever at what I do.
At anything you do.
At anything.
Correct.
Okay, so what happened when we go to a new team, at least a new head coach, Marty Schottenheimer, who I think was my best coach, most underrated coach maybe in NFL history. What was it about Marty and the way he brought the team together? When you're thinking about your team, how do you create that culture of confidence and toughness at whatever it is that they're doing? In this case, it could be selling Kannaway products. It could be dealing with the CBD, different legal challenges in different countries in Europe, all the different markets, all the competition now that's there. What would you say is what Marty brought to the Kansas City Chiefs that instantly made us a better team?
I think he even had a shirt that said, "It's in the details. Pay attention to the little things." I mean, he just ingrained that in our heads. And that's what leads to examining the previous day, the previous week, month, year, the games, to look at the details and figure out where you can improve. It's what I also learned from you indirectly through him, because you were the hard worker, he's pushing for hard work, is don't ever settle for, you were a Pro Bowler. Don't ever settle for that. How can you be a Pro Bowler again or be a better Pro Bowler? So I would do things like try your sports psychologist to see if it would help me with my mental game. You know, even though nobody ever said you have a mental problem, but I'm just trying to get better. So
it's okay. I'm here to say you did have a mental problem. Just kidding. So what did you learn from Dr. Andrew Jacobs? What did he teach you?
Well, Andrew and I spent very little time together because I took his personality profile test. And when I went back for the review, he said, "You know, you're right in the middle." I said, "Okay, how does that help or hurt me?" He says, "Well, you're pretty balanced. Most people are one side or the other." He said, "So I don't have a lot to help you with other than we can talk." And I just decided that I've got Nick for that. He's pretty good at sports psychology.
You know, so that's okay, but you were open to that. And so even though you didn't pursue it further in that complete way, you had one more reference, which probably was self-affirming.
Yeah. Well, it's just one of many things. Diet. How do you change your diet? Working out. How do you change your working out? I used to run 5 miles a day.
Yeah.
Until, Dave Redman, Dave says,
our conditioning coach,
nothing for you. Yeah, that does nothing for you. You need to do fast, quick twitch muscles. And I started running hills and steps. And so there's always something you can change based on where you've been and not just where you want to go, but how you can stay there.
And I think
how did I, 40-year-old men, beat these young guys coming in that you would think could outkick us all day long?
Let me tell you, I hadn't kicked in 3 years. And Dick Vermeil called me up, and Al Saunders and Frank Gans flew me into St. Louis, and I outkicked 3 punk little 25-year-olds. There's nothing more satisfying with that. I mean, not kicked at all. But I will say, going back to this discipline is we also suffer in our culture, and very often in the culture of a company if you're not careful. But most importantly, what we can control is our sense of whether we're good enough. Because if we think I'm good enough, we need enough confidence to build ourselves, to push ourselves to new levels. But we also need a little bit of healthy, creative insecurity. I put it that way. Not deliberate insecurity where you beat yourself up, but saying, how can I get better? What else can I learn? The way players train today, if you watch Tariq Hill running hills today, have you seen those videos, Bryan? He runs faster than any human being I've ever seen. And that shows you the level of intensity. He's running straight uphill. He lets one of his teammates, albeit a linebacker, have a 30-yard head start, and he outruns him up a 60-yard hill. I've never seen that. So and you have to be, of course, realistic to what you're capable of too. Sometimes it's just that little 1%. One of the things I want to ask you about is the 1% idea. What do you think about just the idea that during the season, you're just trying to improve 1% a day or 1/10 of 1% a day? Because I believe that that actually is enough, because that little bit ends up being huge, and it's realistic. It's realistic to you as a human being. And really, in one day, we often don't see the improvement. We can't jump 10%. Sometimes when we least experience it, we've actually have made that improvement, but that realistic improvement, that's what it's about. That keeps you going. Just to, Wayne Dyer talks about how he was so out of shape and fat, and then he just made a decision with himself to run one more light post every day. And then he found himself being able to run half marathons and then marathons on a regular basis.
Well, I'll give you two examples of how that applied to me. First, I always had, most of the time, had a young kicker come to camp to try and take my job. So there was a natural built-in, security issue to start with.
In your face competition.
But I didn't let that rule what I did. In fact, it encouraged me towards your 1% conversation, where I decided I'm going to kick a little bit more each day, each week, just to get that endurance. Because for me to beat a young player, I need to be able to kick more than he can. And what happened throughout the rest of my career is I could kick anyone under the table. I don't know if you remember, but I would kick hundreds of balls.
Yeah.
I'd kick more on Sunday. I'd swing my leg more on Sunday than I did the whole week, and that was a ton.
That's a lot.
And nobody could keep up with that. But the 1% on game day for my position, I might have 5, 6 punts, or I might have 1. So that 1 punt, that 1%'s a much bigger number. If I don't improve that 1 punt, it's not a collective, improvement across the board. It's just I have one opportunity, and that 1% better be there. So you're absolutely correct.
Okay, so I'm hearing two standards for our Kannaway brand ambassador champions, right? Number one is the discipline to have endurance, to be conditioned intellectually, spiritually, physically, to run the race, right? To be able to outkick the young punk, if you will. But I would add to that, the balance for me was, I tell kickers when I coach them that I'd rather see you kick 20 perfect kicks and stop than kick 300 where maybe 30 or 40 are bad. Because you want to develop the mental focus, because in the game, it really is just 2 or 3 or 4 kicks, like you just said. And so it's that intensity to say, this one matters, I've got to get it done. And no one cares about your excuses, whether your girlfriend had an argument with you, whether you threw up on the sidelines, whether you have to pee, whether it's bad weather. No one cares. The coach hates you. People don't like you. Your mom said something mean to you. Your dad said something, your coach. None of that matters. Get it done right now. And that's hard for people to handle today. Everybody's so sensitive. Oh, I'm so sensitive. You mean to me and you're criticizing me. You know what? If you want to be the best, you have to figure out how am I going to get it done and have no excuses. And Bryan, what about this? After the game, if I missed a field goal, do you think it made any sense to make an excuse? If you had a bad punt, did you ever get some, a reporter saying, oh, well, okay, now I understand why you had that bad punt. Okay, well, I guess that's okay. We'll leave you off the hook then.
Yeah, it was, so 2 things there. First, everything was filmed from multiple angles, right? So if something happened in the game that caused a play to not go as successfully or smoothly as we wanted, it's all on film. So you really don't have to complain or make an excuse for anything. It's there to see. If there's no reason for your bad execution, then it's on you, and you got to deal with that in the meeting with your special teams coach and the team meeting with the head coach. So you're exactly right. There's no reason to talk about it, but I just felt like as a holder more than a punter, if there was an issue with the snap, weather, wind, whatever, it was very obvious. And instead of me saying it was a bad snap, everyone could see that the wind actually took that ball and moved it a foot. And Bryan had to get off his knee to pick it out of the air to hopefully give Nick a chance to make the kick.
Well, let me give you an example of that and see if you remember this. 1993, and of course I was only 6 years old because I'm only 29 now. Anyway, don't do the arithmetic. 1993, we're playing Cleveland, and it's a game-winning field goal, 37-yarder left hash. Bryan Barker is my holder, the guy I'm talking to right now. And the snap comes back way inside, way outside. And you have to grab it here, almost leave your foot, bring it back and put it down for me to kick. And what I had learned, here I was now in my 14th year in the league, was slow down. If I don't slow down, these are all these things that your micro muscles and your brain has to learn as you're moving forward. And I slowed down, and my leg actually came through slower, but strong enough that it gave you time, that extra 0.3 of a second to put it down, and it hooks slowly through, game winner, we win the game. And no one probably but you and I really knew that. But on the other hand, as you also said, in your team meetings, if you're a brand ambassador and you meet with your team, having a way to film it, to have the equivalent say, okay, here's how you present. Here's how you did a good job. Here's where you could have done it better. My coach was Kurt Schottenheimer. He did not know much about kicking, but he did know to observe. When I made a good kick, Nick, here are your habits. And that time he didn't do it. So having some way, maybe it's not a film session, but it's being able to have that honest, positive feedback, but also realistic feedback. Marty Schottenheimer, he would get in front of the whole team like you mentioned. And if a player embarrassed the team, he would tend to have a lot of respect and not embarrass the player. But from time to time, you knew you might be called out. And so there's that pressure because you don't want to let your teammates down. So the head coach, the leader, has to create that environment where hard work, loving the preparation, then performance, get it done when it matters, and then have a balance of being able to have a little bit of fun. What was fun for you?
Well, remember, Marty always said, trust, gentlemen, trust the system. The system works.
The system works.
That system works. As far as you and I go, I was a new holder for you. You had a long-time holder who decided in training camp that he was going to retire. So I was really thrown in, a young guy for you. You straightened me out really quickly. And I think what you told me eventually is that you learned to trust, no matter where I had to go to get the snap, that I was always going to have it on the spot. It may not be there as quickly as possible because of other circumstances, but it wasn't going to be 3 inches to the front, side, or the back. And that is something that every kicker I played with since, I would just say, listen, don't stop. Finish every kick, because if the whistle blows, you get a freebie. If it's a bad snap, you're never going to make a kick you don't kick. So just trust it's going to be there, and it worked.
And everybody's looking at you. You're 8 yards behind the line of scrimmage. It's what you do right then. The thing I loved about you, Bryan, and I'm going to say this with my partner here, Lisa, who helps us out, because one of the things I respect about her is you love the work. And so early in my career, I had Steve Fuller as my holder, and I finally made it. I beat out Jan Stenerud and broke every one of his records and crushed his records. Anyway, getting ahead of myself. But I thought that somehow that Steve Fuller and I had to have some sort of mystical, magical relationship, and it was just that chemistry. Then after about my 14th holder in about 12 years, I began to think if the guy just cares about doing the work, we'll be okay. And that's the way you were with me. And we led the NFL in scoring, 24 field goals in a row in 1990, then 21 field goals in a row the next year, another streak, and then the next year, 22 for 24. And I love to tell this story because late in the season, because I made the Pro Bowl, and we'll talk about that story too. Late in the season, I'm going to a quick trip, and this lady behind the counter recognized me because it was a quick trip on the way home, not too far from the stadium. And she goes, "Hey, yeah, eggs? Or wait a minute, I know you. You're the kicker for the Chief, Nick Lowery, yeah. I saw you miss that field goal. What the hell's wrong with you? My grandma could have made that kick." And that is, I think, a beautiful thing for a young athlete. We learn this, and some people don't learn it until they've had incredible careers in business, and then they don't realize as they're getting near the top that there will always be unfair standards applied to them. So, but you know what? I made the Pro Bowl after missing that kick that lady saw, and I didn't know it. And you and I, we'd go out an hour before the practice, and we'd be on the gray, at that point, gray, brown grass field, practice field outside Arrowhead Stadium on the outside of the parking lots there. And you said to me, Nick, Marty Schottenheimer's here. He's walking over, and you and I were both thinking, I know I was, what did I do wrong? You know?
Yeah.
And he walked over to us, and with a wonderful, sweet, sheepish grin, he said, congratulations, you made the Pro Bowl. And I tell you, I can get tears in my eyes right now thinking about it. That's one style of leadership. But I have to tell you, Marty was so freaking tough. I just wanted to not have to talk about it, but get it done so that he would just, that would mean the world to me. And I had a few of those moments with him because he just said, basically, I don't care about kickers, just get it done. You'll be on the team. And if you don't, you won't. And he loved hard work. He loved performance. So my favorite statistic is, because Marty would love to play his cards very close to him, and we'd get ahead in the first, second quarter and then hold on until the end. So the kicks were really important. At one point, Bryan, you and I was 38 for 40 in the fourth quarter under Marty Schottenheimer. So if you think about the statistics, this is the other interesting contradiction. If you're so swollen with statistics, you can't let your body and your mind just react. And I think the secret for me, and I'm trying to share with you, and I love your comment about this, is that hard work, and then let things play themselves out. So tell us about that in big games, intensity. What did you do to be ready for a big game and not be too overwhelmed by the pressure?
I think Mark Sallin, you mentioned him earlier, he was just so cool, just steady, calm, but he performed, true professional. And I had other teammates like that. You were similar to that. You got a little edgy on third down, but for me to succeed, I had to stay level. I couldn't get too excited about a great kick. I couldn't get too down about a bad kick, because there was going to be another one. And it might be the very next play, which has happened. It's penalty, comeback, you got to do it again. So
yep. No, I was edgy on third down, by the way. So on third down, right, you don't know if you're going to, you don't know, like the punter doesn't either. You don't know if you're going to have the field goal, but it's points. It's right there. And so I always wanted to get a kick in and be ready and run on. I've seen a couple of kickers in the NFL that aren't ready. The kicker for the Cardinals about 10 years ago, and he's jogging onto the field for a game-winning field goal. He literally took too much time, kicked the ball after the play had taken too much time, so it didn't count. Went through, but didn't count. Then he moved it back 5 yards, and he missed it. And so taking care of those things that you can control. Be ready, be ready, be ready. Some coaches, it starts with John Wooden would do this, Fitz Lombardi would do this. Be at the meeting 10 minutes early.
Yeah, so you're talking about consistency too, right? I mean, you have to be consistent in everything that you do, so that when the pressure goes up, you have that consistency you can fall back on and say, I've been here before. I've done this so many times. Yeah, it's a game-winning kick, but a funny story I'll remind you about, we were playing San Diego at Arrowhead, 91. It was, we're in overtime, and it was the game that Marty promised triple blue-collar dollars to the special teams players that made big plays, which includes a game-winning field goal or an extra point. So we line up. I think we had 2 punts down inside the 5 in the overtime period, and then we line up to kick, because of that second punt, we line up to kick a field goal to win it. And everybody's geeked up. We're going to be in the playoffs. We're going to be at Arrowhead if we make this kick. And I went. That was back when we used to huddle. I went back in the huddle. All the big fellas are sweating. They're towering over the top of me. And I'm just a second-year guy. And I said, hey, guys, remember one thing. This isn't about anything other than those triple blue-collar dollars, which was about $300 a piece for guys that are making. But
that worked, right?
Oh, my gosh. The guys got so excited about us, like, let's go get this, which is part of just keeping it calm and not getting too caught up in the moment.
Having a little fun. So a little thing about pressure and intensity, how you deal with butterflies, for those of you, when you have a presentation, et cetera, is the brain, when it's self-conscious, activates large muscle groups. Its dexterity, its subtlety is wiped out. By being less self-conscious, we tap into the natural flow of the synapses in our brain and all of the incredibly complex chronological firing of the neurons and the muscles to throw the ball, to run, to kick, etc. The self-consciousness gets in the way, interrupts that pattern. And I took later in my career, but I finally, what I would say to myself, and I'm not sure, I want to hear what you would say to yourself if you did anything. I would say left foot, which would simply remind myself to point my left foot right at the target because I was kicking with my right foot, and explode. And explode worked for me. Other people have to find whatever works for them. The idea was don't hesitate. If you're trying to be too perfect, that's when you get self-conscious, and that's where you make your mistakes. You've done 100,000 kicks, 200,000 kicks. Let that natural intelligence happen. And the other thing is, just like the snap on a tennis racket, you know, where a 120-pound guy will hit a 130-mile-an-hour serve, and the guy that can bench press 600 pounds can't hit a serve at all. You know, that's that snap, that crack of the whip. And that's where not being self-conscious is really important. And the same thing goes with your training too intellectually. You know, to some degree, you have to just let it go. And as long as you speak from the heart, play from the heart, there's a grounding there. And that really helped me. The ball, here's the analogy. The ball, when it's hit with its natural flow, fights the wind better. The wind represents the adversities and the unpredictable, chaotic factors that will always happen in life. Just like this ridiculous COVID thing, just like everything else that's going on in the world today. So you focus on what you can control, attack the ball, obviously with the discipline and the hard work you've practiced, and it fights the wind better. If you're too careful, the ball, instead of slowing down at the 40 yards, so that the last 10 yards is the only time when it's pushed a little bit by the wind, now it's being pushed by the wind at 30 yards and can be affected more, if that makes sense to you. So my game-winning percentage got even better because I stopped being so self-conscious and remembered to attack the ball. So remember that. When in doubt, Frank Gans had a great saying, toujours audace. It's a saying that basically just fortune favors the bold. Fortune favors the bold. So, Bryan, so tell us one quick, we've only got a few minutes now. Tell us about after you left the Chiefs. You know, you could have been down. You probably were down at one point, but you catch on. What was it that you took from that experience that enabled you to catch fire and play another 10 years?
I got better every year in Kansas City. Each of my 4 seasons I improved on, and I was surprised that I wouldn't get a 5th season, but I ended up playing for the Eagles that 5th year, and I led the NFC, and I was awarded the NFC Punter of the Year trophy in Chicago. First time I ever won an award for playing football, and then that just continued. I only had that one season in Philly. I played 6 years in Jacksonville as an original Jaguar player. Had a lot of success. It's a lot easier to kick the ball in Florida than it is at Arrowhead or in Philly at the Vet. And then, my career then continued on in Washington with the Redskins. But you asked me something a little bit earlier about, what do I say to myself to kind of keep everything calm and equal? And it came very naturally because there were so many facets of punting, right? Where you stand, where you aimed, where you're supposed to kick it if everything goes right. Where are they rushing from? Now I got to catch the ball. I got to get rid of it in a second and hope that it goes in the right place. That would overwhelm anybody, and it probably overwhelmed a lot of people with much stronger legs than me. But what I started doing very early on, and maybe you taught me this, I would just say, just kick the ball. All the other stuff you work on in practice, but when it's on and when it's game day, just kick the ball. And as I transitioned from the Chiefs to the Eagles to a tryout to get on the Eagles team, just kick the ball. It's windy. I kick into the wind. I'm used to this. Just kick the ball.
Don't think too much. I mean, I think I can hear Mike Tyson saying, just punch the guy.
Yeah.
Punch him, just punch him in the mouth. Find the thing that pulls all of it together so you attack it. There's a little artistry to it. There's obviously confidence in it too, but there's a divine confidence that we all have if we trust it. So, Bryan, now, since your career, 16 years, and by the way, didn't Marty Schottenheimer kind of basically admit he made a mistake and bring you back to the Redskins?
Yeah, 8 years after he let me go, he said, you're going to be at midnight when free agency started. He said, you're going to be my punter. I promise you, don't go anywhere without talking to me. And I thought I'd finish my last 4 years, 15, age 40 with Marty in Washington, but he was exchanged for Steve Spurrier after his first year of coaching. and I only got to play for him for that one more year.
That was just the beginning of the Dan Snyder interesting coaching carousel. So after your career, what is the most important thing? We're going to talk about giving back. You always did a lot of things in the community. But before we get to that, what's the most important thing you can share with people about, oh gosh, as an athlete, what can this person teach me? What can you share that has helped you in business? Because you've been a very good businessman. You did a lot of insurance, right? Tell us more
Correct.
about what was the most important discipline and habit of success that absolutely made you better in business as well?
I think what I said earlier, how do I try to get better every day? What can I do differently to improve myself? My diet may not help me kick better, but it might help me sleep better. And if I sleep better, maybe I can get stronger. And if I get stronger, maybe I can kick the ball better. So it's all interconnected. And I think everybody needs to apply that to their life, no matter what they're doing in business, sports, etc. How can you improve constantly? As soon as you, as you said earlier, as soon as you rely on where you are, I made it, I'm good, it's probably going to be diminishing returns after that. So you've got to actually put in the work. Number two, we had tremendous teammates in sports. Fortunately, both of us played with unbelievable, not just athletes, but people, gentlemen, men as well. And,
Name some.
And then we worked with, I played with Joe Montana, Brett Favre, Herschel Walker, Christian Okoye, Marcus
Ron Cherry.
Probably the 93 Chiefs was the best overall team that I was a part of my 16 rosters. That team all across the board. And it's fun to see the guys every now and then and catch up as I did last year with Kevin Ross and our wonderful number 48, Todd McNair.
Yeah, the crazy Todd McNair. All right, so giving back. I always want to make sure we underscore how important this is, because so many players, so many musicians, so many actors, so many high-profile people make it. They get the Grammy, they get the Oscar, and then they sabotage it. And to me, when you realize that this success is a gift that allows you to inspire kids, it allows you to inspire who knows who, and that is part of the beautiful gift of success, is the increased ability to help others as well, and then you actually do it. And I'll tell you what, yesterday we had a huge thing here in Phoenix with these clear masks that we're providing, and for people that are deaf, people that are learning disabled, the teachers, speakers, waiters, whatever, providing something out of the negative energy of COVID, I think is really important. What can you do to make life better? So for you, Bryan, I'm going to be a little serious here. You went through a divorce. 80% of athletes in the NFL have financial issues and relationship issues after they leave the game within 2 years. How did you deal with that? How would you suggest you give other people some insight into getting past those disappointments and using your success and those lessons to transcend it?
Well, that's an interesting question when you ask, how do I deal with that? It's not like sports. It'd be easy to say, well, as I changed teams, I, focused on getting better and doing more, but that doesn't really apply to a marriage. I don't know that I'll ever stop dealing with it because it was such a huge part of my life, children and everything. But I would say that you do wake up every day, the sun rises and the sun sets. And so there's a tremendous opportunity to do something during the day to advance where you are from yesterday. And that's what I've focused on, whether it's business, whether it's charity work. One thing that we all have as former athletes, if we think about it, is tremendous networks. It's not just the athletes we played with and the coaching staffs and all the admin staff. It's just the people that we've met in business. So if anyone, even non-athletes, if we're just talking to the regular person who didn't play professional sports, a lot of people. And if you have an idea on how you want to convert that idea to help somebody else, it's fun to engage people. Most people want to help. And if you ask someone for help because you're trying to help another, any of your ideas can be turned into successful adventures for sure.
What's the one cause that you would love people to know about in terms of community help?
Well, we had a sports camp for young girls for more than 10 years in multiple NFL cities called Let Us Play. It was really just a chance to give these girls who never had an opportunity to play sports the opportunity to play and learn from professional athletes as coaches, and listen to professional athletes as guest speakers talk about where they came from. That was a great run. Lately I've been working with Jacksonville Spina Bifida. There's a go-kart race every year. We just had it.
I've been on that go-kart course too.
Yes, it is. It's a bunch of fun. It's a 6-hour race, and it's team oriented. I had 2 co-drivers, and we just had a blast raising money to help Jacksonville Spina Bifida.
So everybody, if you look in the corner to Bryan's left in the camera, you see some cars there. So what about the intensity of car racing? You always love fast cars. What does it do for you?
So it's really about looking forward, looking ahead. When you're driving around a racetrack, it's not just a bunch of turns and you just follow the road. There are faster ways through each turn. There is actually a faster lap if you don't get caught up in where you are at the moment and you look through the next couple of turns to where you want to be. You're going to be more consistent. You're going to be faster in a race car. That appeals to me greatly, not just in a car on a track, but if you're driving on the road. It's called defensive driving, looking ahead to make sure there's nothing coming. If I ride my mountain bike on the trails, it's the same thing. I'm not looking at the dirt in front of my front wheel. I'm looking through a couple trees to where I'm going, and it just makes the journey that much more enjoyable and successful.
Bryan Barker, I'm going to give you a really heartfelt compliment to you, buddy. It's about being intentional in our lives. You were always intentional, and you matured into a great punter and obviously a great teammate and good friend. And I just want to say great respect to you. And I think the lesson to take from that is we don't want to go through life reactive, waiting for things to happen. If something's important to us, make it important to you. Be intentional. Write it down. Pull yourself towards that and align your values so that you're pulled towards that. And you pull in great people like Bryan Barker and Christian Okoye and Solomon Wilcots and Marty Schottenheimer and Marcus Allen. And, by doing that, and in your own life, they will be attracted to that clarity of purpose that you have. So thank you for being an example of intentionality. You sure better be that when you're driving 150 miles an hour or more. But thanks again for sharing us on Kannaway Sports, Bryan Barker.
Sure. I'd like to close with one thing, Nick. I saw this today. You might have heard of it before. I've never heard of it, but it applies to everybody that's trying to build a business within Kannaway. There is a difference between being an entrepreneur and a wantrepreneur. Entrepreneur, wantrepreneur. Many people want it, but not many become the entrepreneur. So pick which one you want and go for it.
Well, we know which one we want. Thank you for being part of Kannaway Champions. And Bryan Barker, God bless you. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll see you next week.